During the time when Eric called her, she was in the kitchen preparing breakfast for her family. And as Eric introduced himself, Momo turned off the gas stove and sat down at the dining table. "Hello, Mr. Parker. How may I help you? Thank you for your precious time, Mrs. Takahashi. I'm sure by now you may have already guessed the reason behind this call. So I won't beat around the bush and say it to you directly. I'm interested in your son and I'd like to sign him," Eric stated bluntly without beating around the bush. While talking with Principal Miyamoto, Eric had learned from him that Hiro's mother was a smart, straightforward lady who was not fond of people talking in circles. Thus, he expressed his desire without delaying any further. Hearing his reply, she paused for a while. With her brows drawing closer and face tightening, she began to think. Even though she didn't know much about football, she knew the meaning behind his words. She had been learning about football in her spare time to be of help to her son. "I very well understand your interest towards my son, Mr. Parker, but you know he's still 10 years old, right? And he's still attending elementary school. So isn't it a bit too soon for that?" Hiro's mother inquired. Even though she was a person who was very fond of money, she wasn't the type of person who'd recklessly gamble her son's future. She prioritized his well-being more than anything else. "I'm very well aware of your concerns towards your son, Mrs. Takahashi, and I'm well aware of his age too. But Mrs. Takahashi, here in Europe, exceptional players get scouted by agents even before they make it to the professional stage. But still, isn't it a bit too soon for him to move to Europe?" Momo expressed her concerns. She was hesitant to send her son away to some foreign country before his 18th birthday. However, she was also very well aware of her son's interest and talent in football. Thus, despite her unwillingness to send him away, she was somewhat prepared to go with him, if it could help him elevate his career. "Ha ha ha. No, Mrs. Takahashi, you've got it all wrong. He won't be moving to Europe until he turns 18. So you can be at ease regarding that matter. And there's also this rule in Europe that forbids club to sign foreign players who have not turned 18. I only want to sign Hiro for now and help him elevate his career in Japanese football. And only after he'll turn 18, I'll present him to the clubs in Europe." Eric laughed heartily and helped her clear her doubts. Eric's words convinced her. She was relieved to hear that he wouldn't need to move to Europe right away. "So, Mrs. Takahashi, would you be interested in my offer?" Eric added. "Would it be possible for me to give you the answer after I discuss it with my husband and son? Since this concerns the future of my son, so I'd like to talk to him before giving you my answers." "You can take all the time you want, Mrs. Takahashi. Since I'd be visiting Hiro's school tomorrow, you can give me your answer tomorrow at the school." Yokohama, Kanagawa, Japan. Nissan Stadium. The grasses in the pitch were reflecting the golden rays of morning sun still relatively closer to the horizon. The morning rays of sun had casted a silhouette of the stadium at one end of the pitch, while the other end was lit with the bright illuminating light of the sun. With one end of the pitch covered in the shade and another end engulfed in the bright rays of morning sun, a match was taking place in the stadium. Group of players in red and green bibs were competing among themselves. At the sidelines, a man in his early 40s was seen yelling at the players in front. Dressed in a comfortable green tracksuit, he wore a very stern expression in his face. "What are you doing, Shunta? Your timing is way too slow. You need to move faster in order to shake off your mark." With a relatively short stature, he was about 5 feet 6 inches tall, and with a relatively tanned skin, his frenzy outgrown beard and messy medium-length black hair gave away the impression of a homeless person. His lush black eyebrows made his double-lid eye even more appealing. However, the eye bags under his eyes gave away the impression of sleep deprivation. As if he was deprived of sleep for days, the eye bags underneath his eyes were pretty intense. While he was yelling at the players, another man in his mid-30s with a relatively average-looking appearance made his way towards the pitch. Dressed in turquoise blue shirt and casual gray pants, he made his way towards the pitch while carrying a tablet in his hand. Neatly combed hair and clean-shaven face, he gave away the vibe of a typical Japanese salaryman. "Manager Tatsuya. Manager Tatsuya. I need to show you something," the man exclaimed as he got closer to the man at the sidelines. The man in the sidelines was the manager of the youth team of Yokohama F. Marinos. Yokohama F. Marinos was a team which belonged to the First Division League of Japanese professional football leagues. Having already won 3 league titles, they were one of the powerhouse football team of J1. And that man, Tatsuya Kaido, was the manager of the U18 team of Yokohama F. Marinos. Still only 42 years old, he was one of the youngest manager in the league. It was already impressive for him to coach such a big team at his age in Japan. Yet what was even more amazing was the fact that he had one of the highest level coaching license in Japan. He had a S-class coaching license which allowed him to coach even the professional teams of J1. What is it this time, Haruki? Tatsuya replied while sounding all annoyed. The average-looking man with the tablet in his hand was the youth scout, Haruki Matsuya, of Yokohama F. Marinos. Already in his mid-30s, he was a very enthusiastic man. You need to watch this, he exclaimed as he played the video of the match between Ukami Elementary School and Tokyo Elementary School. What's special in it? It's just a bunch of kids running for the ball, he exclaimed as he tried to shrug him off. Tatsuya-san. Just watch this for once, Haruki pleaded. Hearing his plea, Tatsuya could no longer ignore him, and thus he began to watch the video of the match. That number 10 kid looks really good, he exclaimed while watching the video. His techniques, his dribble, his vision, the way he controls the ball and dictates the pace of the game. It feels like I'm watching Prime Zidane himself. Tatsuya mumbled in awe. It'll get even more interesting. Just keep watching. Haruki had compiled important highlights from the match between Ukami Elementary School and Tokyo Elementary School, so that Tatsuya wouldn't need to watch the whole match. Whoa! Are these guys even students? That defender from opposing team is good too. While the rest of the players were pretty average, he couldn't stop himself from praising Akutsu and Hiro. No wonder you're the coach of the U18 team of Yokohama F. Marinos. You could spot the star players with a single glance. Haruki mumbled in awe. After watching the whole video, Tatsuya revealed a wide grin. Tatsuya suddenly grabbed Haruki's shoulder and looked him in the eyes. I want these two players, Haruki. Get me these two players, he exclaimed with great excitement. But Tatsuya-san, one of those players belongs to Tokyo Elementary School. Haruki exclaimed while trying to break free from his hold. Elementary School? Tatsuya bewilderingly questioned. Yes, Tatsuya-san. The match you just watched is the final match of the National Elementary School Tournament. I thought they'd at least be in middle school. Has elementary school level football progressed this far already in Japan? Tatsuya gave Haruki a perplexing look. Then how old are these kids? The defender is already 13 and he'll be graduating elementary school this year. However, the attacking midfielder you're so interested in is only 10 years old. He'll be graduating elementary school next year. Only 10 years old? And he's that good? Tatsuya couldn't believe that Hiro was only 10 years old after witnessing his gameplay. At least we can still recruit the defender next year. About that. He'll most like join the academy of Tokyo FC since he's from Tokyo, Haruki intoned. Damn. We'll face even more tough opponents next year. It's kinda sad we won't get to recruit him, but still the future of Japanese football looks quite good, Tatsuya exclaimed while revealing a smile on his face. What about that kid? I'm sure we can recruit him in our junior youth team and promote him to the youth team within some year. The scene around other professional team was pretty much similar to that of Yokohama F. Marinos. Besides the youth scout of Yokohama F. Marinos, youth scouts of several other professional teams and schools were present at the stadium to spectate the match between Ukami Elementary School and Tokyo Elementary School. Even though not many teams in Japan had put emphasis on youth team in the past, however, things were changing and many professional teams were beginning to copy the European system. Instead of buying expensive players, they were starting to invest on young talents, and it hadn't been that long since professional teams in Japan started operating their youth teams more seriously. Hiro, go freshen up and come down for breakfast, his mother yelled while he was taking his sweat time fiddling with the system. Okay, Mom. He yelled back. He then closed the system and hopped out of his bed. After getting out of his bed, he began to fold the blankets and started to make his bed. Ring. 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 While making his bed, suddenly his phone started to ring. Who's calling me this early in the morning? He wondered as he tried to take a peek at his phone, which was located at the top of the drawer beside his bed. Akashi. Why is he calling me this early in the morning? The one who was calling him was Akashi. As soon as he picked his call, Akashi began to spit his words in rapid-fire succession. Sup? It's me. What are you doing today? Are you free? I got this urge to game today. Do you want to tag along with me to the arcade? Hiro couldn't handle his loud voice and he immediately distanced his phone from his ear. Hello. Hello. Why aren't you replying? Akashi kept on talking. Perhaps the network's not working. Or it must be server issues. Finally, as he stopped his blabbering, Hiro answered the call. Have you calmed down? And don't start to blabber like before. Akashi then paused for a while. So now tell me, why have you called me this early in the morning? Hiro questioned. I just want to ask you if you're free today. I don't have anything to do today. So I guess I'm kinda free. Hiro replied after thinking for a while. Then let's go to the arcade together. Akashi intoned, sounding all excited. Arcade, huh? Again Hiro began to ponder over the topic of arcade. Well, I don't have anything to do today. So why not? Then let's meet at the community park at 10. Without even hearing his reply, Akashi hung the call. As if he was only calling him to hear his yes or no, he cut off the call as soon as Hiro agreed to his request. Step. After brushing his teeth, he made his way towards the kitchen. As he entered the kitchen, he found his mother and father sitting silently at the dining table. The room was filled with an eerie silence. His father lifted his head slightly and looked at him with icy cold gaze. Come here and take your seat. He spoke while wearing a serious expression on his face. Why does he look so serious today? I've not seen him like that in years. He wondered as he walked towards the dining table. He was pondering the reason behind his father's facial expression. Did I do something wrong to upset him? As he took his seat, he hesitatingly took a peek at his father's face. We need to discuss something with you, Hiro. His father spoke while staring at him. Even though he hadn't done anything wrong to upset him, he began to worry even more upon witnessing the stern expression in his face. This is a serious matter, so I hope you don't take it lightly, Takashi mumbled. Feeling all anxious, he nodded his head. His heart rate spiked and he began to sweat. The stern expression on his father's face only made him more anxious. Congratulations, Hiro. Your talent has even been noticed by Europeans. You've got an offer from an European agent. Suddenly his father congratulated him with a wide grin on his face. His face quickly changed its expression from serious to happy. And sorry about my expression from before. I just wanted to see your reaction. And oh my, you're pretty terrified. Ha ha ha. Takashi was playing a prank on him by intentionally showcasing a serious expression. His father would sometimes play pranks on him out of blue. Takashi and Momo, both of them burst out in laughter as Takashi finished his sentence. Upon hearing his father's words, he was left dumbfounded. He then took a peek at his mother's face. Unlike his father, his mother was a straightforward person who didn't like prank and jokes. What, Mom? You two were also involved in his act, he complained. Sorry about that, Hiro. I told him not to do that, but he wouldn't listen to me. So I too joined in for the fun, she expressed while laughing. I'm really sorry about that, Hiro. But you indeed got an offer from an European agent. His father mumbled while trying to hold his laughter. If it was his younger self, he would have immediately walked out of the room feeling all agitated, but he accepted their jokes and laughed with them instead. After a while, as the laughter died down, they began to discuss about the offer from Eric. So he says that he'll help you develop your career in Japan until you reach 18 years of age. He also mentioned about that FIFA, the governing body of football, has brought a new rule into effect. And that rule forbids the club to sign a foreign player before turning 18. Momo spoke while trying to recall the things Eric said to her in the phone. So what do you want to do, Hiro? If you agree to the deal, then we can talk about the deal tomorrow in your school. He said that he'd be visiting your school tomorrow, Momo added. Since he already had a quest from the system, he couldn't refuse the offer under any circumstances, and it was once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get scouted by the soon-to-be famous European agent Eric Parker. As he would amass fame in his later years, top players from all over the world would dream to work with him. Just like how Jorge Mendes, the famous agent, made possible the transfer of Cristiano Ronaldo from Manchester United to Real Madrid, Eric in his later years would go on to pull such amazing feats and announce his presence to the world. And thus, there was absolutely no way he would pass on the chance to work with Eric. Let's just agree to his offer, he blurted out without a second of hesitation. Don't make your decision in haste, Hiro. At least think for a while. His mother expressed her concerns, sounding all worried. If she wanted, then she could have talked with Eric by herself, but since the matter concerned her son's future, she wanted him to think properly regarding that matter. She didn't want him to make his decisions in a hurry regardless of the benefit of the offer. He understood her concerns and the meaning behind her words. She was only worried about him and his future. Okay, Mom. Let's talk about the offer with him tomorrow in school, he mumbled while keeping his cool, locking eyes with her. Okay, now that the matter is resolved, can we have breakfast? I'll get late for the work if this continues, his father blurted. Wait for a second, I'll go fetch the cups and plates. She then stood up from her chair and walked towards the drawer. After setting the utensils on the table, she began to serve the breakfast. There was nothing extravagant in the table. Just some rice, miso soup, fish and potato carrot stew. It was the type of breakfast most people in Japan would have for breakfast. Thank you for the food. The three of them prayed before eating. It was a customary tradition in Japan to pray for the food before digging in. As they finished their breakfast, his father stood up from his chair and left for his work in a hurry, while his mother started to wash the dishes. Mom, can you lend me some money today? I'm going to arcade with my friend. He asked for money from his mother. Even though he made a decent earning through YouTube, he let his parents handle his account, and the money from the YouTube would directly go to their bank account, meaning he had no money under his name, despite being the owner of a successful YouTube channel. However, his parents too had secretively saved the money from the YouTube under his name for his future use, and he wasn't aware of that as well. How much do you need? She asked. Just 10,000 yen, he replied. Huh? That much? She was shocked to hear that amount from a kid. After all, 10,000 yen was equivalent to 68 United States dollars, and she was still paying him out of her pocket and not from his YouTube channel. At first she was hesitant to provide him with such a large sum of money, but after convincing her for a while, she finally agreed to lend him the money. Here, don't spend it recklessly and only spend per your requirement. Try to save as much as you can. She nagged as she handed him the money. Thank you, Mom. I'll spend it wisely, he replied enthusiastically. And as soon as he got the money in his hands, he hurriedly rushed towards his room. As he sat beneath a giant tree to shade himself from the hot rays of sun, he took a peek at his watch. It was already 10:10 and yet there was no sign of Akashi's arrival. They had agreed to meet at exactly 10 a.m. at the community park. Hiro had reached the park even before the time they had agreed to meet. Having reached the park even before 10, he had been waiting for Akashi for almost half an hour. Just where the hell is that big moron? How can one be late in the time set by themselves? Hiro mumbled, feeling all annoyed. Feeling restless, he took a peek at the sky above him to calm him down. Lumps of white clouds in different shapes and sizes were aimlessly floating in the vast blue sky. Buzzing noise of cicada and rising temperature of the surrounding was indicating the arrival of summer season. Cat. PFT, ha 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 ha. He chuckled as he noticed a lump of cloud which resembled the face of a cat. She too used to make such stupid assumptions in the past whenever she witnessed a strange-looking cloud. I guess I kinda picked her habit as well. I wonder what she's been up to. He mumbled as he began to reminisce his past upon witnessing the cat-shaped cloud. I just hope that she's doing fine. Just as he was reminiscing his past, a gentle gust of warm breeze blew past him. He immediately closed his eyes as some of the leaves from the trees above started to fall down. Sorry for making you wait, dude. While leaving the house, I got caught by Grandpa. Akashi spoke in a state of breathlessness. Why were you caught by your grandpa? Did you do something mischievous? Hiro questioned while trying to open his eyes. As he opened his eyes, he found Akashi covered in sweat. He looked extremely exhausted and out of breath. Why do you look so tired? Did you run or something? Yeah, I had to run away from him, he replied, gasping heavily. First off all, take a moment to breathe properly. Inhale. Exhale. Akashi began to inhale and exhale deep breaths to stabilize his breathing. After few inhales and exhales, his breathing finally stabilized. Now tell me, why did you need to run away from your grandpa? Hiro questioned as Akashi stabilized his breathing. Did you steal his money or what? No, it's not because of that reason. He just wanted to play shogi, Japanese chess, with me today. Well, you could have come after finishing a game too. That way you wouldn't have to run away from him, Hiro mumbled. If only it were that simple. Once he starts to play, he won't stop until he feels satisfied. Akashi exasperated. Also, I did actually steal about 1,000 yen from his coat. So you did steal money. Stealing is not a good thing, Akashi. Hiro was really upset to find out about his misdeeds. I'll pay him back 100-fold when I make it as a pro, Akashi replied without an ounce of guilt. He wasn't even a bit remorseful towards his actions. No, Akashi. You don't steal money. You steal once and it'll become a habit. So you're going to return back the money you stole from your grandpa to your grandpa? Hiro erupted. No matter the reasons, he didn't want his friend to take the path of thievery under any circumstances. Let's go to your house and give him back his money. You're also going to apologize to your grandpa for stealing from him. Okay, I'll give him back his money and I'll also apologize to him. But can't I do it later? Like we're already here, so it would be kind of wasteful to go back again. Akashi began to make excuses. He wasn't willing to go with Hiro that very moment. No, we'll head to arcade later. First we'll return him his money back. Quick, let's head to your house. Hiro sternly denied his request and forced him to lead him the way towards his house. After about 20 minutes of bus ride, they arrived at his house. It was a typical Japanese-style house made up of wood. I'm home, he yelled as he entered his house. Just then a lady in her 30s made her way towards the front door. Black, short hair which barely reached her shoulder hung freely as she walked towards the front door. While looking at Akashi with her black monolid eyes, she spoke. Why have you come back so soon? Didn't you say that you'd be going to arcade with your friend? I'll go after a while. Also, this here is my friend Takahashi Hiro. Akashi introduced him to his mother. Hello Hiro. I'm Akashi's mom. As she introduced herself, she greeted him with a sweet smile in her face. The lady in front was none other than Akashi's mother. Hiro immediately bowed his head down and introduced himself to Akashi's mother. Hello Mrs. Nobara, I'm Takahashi Hiro. It's a pleasure to meet you. He introduced himself and greeted Akashi's mother while bowing his head. I know about you Hiro. Akashi speaks a lot about you. Hiro can do this, Hiro can do that. Whenever he starts to talk about you, he just won't stop until his mouth gets tired. She laughed as she began to reveal about Akashi's words about him. Mom, Akashi exasperated as she began to reveal his secrets. Okay. Come inside and have a sit. I'll bring you some watermelon. She invited them inside. No, auntie. You don't have to do that auntie. We'll be gone in a while. Feeling all nervous, Hiro tried to refuse her hospitality. However, she kept on insisting him to come inside and have something to eat. She wouldn't let him leave on empty stomach. Giving in to her insistence, he agreed to her offer. As they walked inside and his mother left their sight, he whispered on Akashi's ear. You remember, right? You need to return his money and apologize to him? Yeah. Akashi hesitatingly nodded his head. They then headed towards the room at the left side of the hallway. Knock. Come inside. A deep and hoarse voice came from inside the room. As Akashi slid the door open, he witnessed Akashi's grandfather sitting in front of the sliding window, basking in the morning sun. His short silver hair glowed ethereally as the rays of morning sun fell on top of it. With a slightly tanned skin, the wrinkles in his face and hands flowed like waves of sea. Despite his age, his brown eyes were still gleaming with vitality. As if he'd lived for another 20 to 30 years, he looked very young for his age. No matter how many times I witness his appearance, he feels very young to me. If it weren't for his wrinkles and silver hair, people might mistake him for a 40 to 50-year-old. He looks too young for his age. Hiro whispered as he witnessed the appearance of Akashi's grandfather. Would you believe me if I tell you that his real age is 84? Akashi whispered. 84. His eyes opened wide in shock. He couldn't believe Akashi's words. Even though he had seen his grandfather previously, he looked the exact same as the time when he took part in their first prefectural tournament finals against Rondon Elementary School. For this whole time, he never asked of his age and neither did Akashi ever mention about it. What are you two standing over there for? His grandfather spoke in his hoarse voice. They quickly walked towards him and sat with their legs folded. How have you been, Hiro? It's been such a long time since I last saw you. He questioned him about his well-being. I heard that you won the national championship the other day. Congratulations for your triumph. And I'm sorry that I couldn't make it. Oh no. You don't have to be sorry, Grandpa. It's all my fault for never visiting you. So the one who should be apologizing should be me, Grandpa. I'm sorry, Grandpa. He bowed his head down and apologized to Akashi's grandfather for not visiting him. Even though they had been friends for so long, it was his first time visiting Akashi's house. And it was his first time meeting with his mother as well. Just like him, Akashi had never visited his house as well, although he had met with both of his parents. Oh no, you don't have to be sorry about it, Hiro. Akashi's grandfather felt uncomfortable about Hiro's apology. Just then Akashi too bowed his head down and apologized. I'm sorry, Grandpa, for stealing your money. Ha. I'm very glad that you've apologized to me for your misdeed. As Akashi bowed his head down and apologized to his grandfather, he burst out in laughter. I already knew about you stealing money from my coat's pocket. I just didn't want your father to hear about your misdeeds, that's why I didn't react. but I'm really glad that you realized your mistake by your own. Grandpa actually, as he was about to say something, Hiro lightly pulled his t-shirt and stopped him from completing his sentence. As the sun was approaching the horizon, the sky was ablaze with the fire of the setting sun, and as the shadow of the house and the wall in front reached the place where they were playing shogi, he realized that he had spent his whole day at Akashi's house, playing shogi with his grandfather. Check. Hiro mumbled as he captured Akashi's grandfather's king and won the game. Well played, it's my lost. Akashi's grandfather admitted his defeat. It was his 9th victory. Having won 9 times, he had also lost 7 times. They had played a total of 16 games, each one more intense than the previous one. While they were playing shogi, Akashi had dozed off at a certain point of time. It's getting late, Grandpa. I need to head home now, he mumbled as he stretched his body, which had gotten stiff after sitting at the same place for almost 9 hours. Yeah, I think we need to call it an end for today. We'll play again some other days, he replied as he began to arrange the pieces. Just give me a minute, I'll wrap it up and I'll walk you to the bus stop. No, Grandpa, you must be tired from playing all day. I'll go by myself. You can rest, Grandpa. He politely refused his offer and insisted him to take rest. As he put on his shoes, he bid his farewell to Akashi's family and headed home. April 11, 2019. Chatter. As he reached closer to his school, he heard chattering noise of people coming from the school. There was still some time left for the bell to ring. Groups of students were gathered in front of the entrance of school for some reasons. They must be waiting for Eric. Perhaps the news regarding Eric's arrival was leaked somehow, he wondered as he witnessed the crowd of students gathered in front of the entrance. Just as he made his way towards the entrance, he saw a familiar face among the crowd of students. That familiar face belonged to Principal Miyamoto Takumi. Here comes our champ, Principal Miyamoto exclaimed as he walked towards them with a wide grin on his face. Since Eric had told them that he'd be present in the school to discuss about the contract, his mother was accompanying him. The crowd of students roared in his praises as they witnessed his arrival. Good morning, Mrs. Takahashi. As he walked closer to them, he greeted his mother. Good morning, Mr. Miyamoto, she greeted him back. Sensei. Why are you standing in front of the gate? Are you waiting for someone? Hiro questioned. Indeed, I'm waiting for someone. And that someone happens to be you. I'll fill you with the details later. But first we need to go somewhere. Principal Miyamoto exclaimed, sounding all excited. Before he could speak anything else, Principal Miyamoto grabbed his hands and began to lead the way. He was left dumbfounded by Principal Miyamoto's strange behavior. Usually he was the type of person who would maintain his cool under any circumstances, but that day he seemed a little different. After passing through the crowd of students, he led them towards the pitch. Even more students were gathered in the sidelines of the pitch than in front of the entrance. He tried to see past those students gathered in front of the pitch, but he couldn't see anything. Students in front obstructed his vision. Everyone move aside. Move aside, Principal Miyamoto yelled as he made his way towards the pitch. Hearing his voice, everybody began to make way for them. Just as he entered the pitch, he noticed his teammates gathered in the pitch. Along with his teammates, several other local reporters were also present in the pitch. Witnessing the reporters with their cameras and microphones, he could somewhat guess about the situation unfolding in front of his eyes. I see. So this is the reason behind his strange behaviors. He's probably exited for the interview, he thought as he witnessed the flock of reporters in front of him. Yo. You're here. Look at our principal. He's getting overly excited for the interview. As if it was his first time getting interviewed. Ha ha ha. Akashi chuckled. But why did he gather all of us for the interview? Well, I heard that reporters wanted to take a picture of all of us together with the trophy for the cover photo. Also, I'm not sure if it's true or not. I heard that somebody from Europe is coming today. Akashi whispered while trying to conceal his voice as much as he could. Okay, we're ready to shoot. A man wearing a baseball cap yelled. Ding. Dong. Just then the chime of the bell sounded, indicating the starting of the school, and as the bell sounded, Principal Miyamoto began to chase the students towards their respective classes. Soon the crowd dissipated as the students made their way towards their classes. With the dissipation of the crowd, the noise dissipated as well, and the interview began to take place in full swing. We all know that Tokushima Prefecture was previously dominated by the likes of Karasuno Elementary School and Rondon Elementary School. But out of nowhere a new team emerged and challenged their authority. So we'd like to know how you created such a dominant team. Did you plan it from a long time ago or did it just happen out of blue? The reporters began to question the principal. We did indeed plan for this from a long time ago, but it wasn't me who created this team. It's all thanks to our scout Sakamoto and coaching staffs. If not for our excellent scout, we would have never managed to create this incredible team. So I want to thank our scout and coaching staffs for building such an incredible team. Thank you. Principal Miyamoto took a peek at Sakamoto-san and Coach Miura who were standing beside him and bowed his head as he thanked them. Assistant Coach Honda had left the team that year. He was preparing himself for the S-Class license exam. Thank you for your words, Principal Miyamoto. So was it Sakamoto-san who managed to scout Takahashi Hiro? The reporter continued with his question. Yes, indeed, it was Sakamoto-san who scouted Hiro. For that I would like to thank him once again. Thank you, Sakamoto-san. This school owes a lot to you. Principal Miyamoto thanked Sakamoto once again for scouting Hiro. The interview was going pretty smoothly. Just then suddenly a voice from the background distracted them. The voice belonged to the guard. No sir. You can't go over there, sir. The guard was seen struggling to stop a foreigner from entering the pitch. What's happening over there? As the noise became vivid, the reporters turned their gazes towards the commotion taking place at the sidelines. What's happening over there? Coach Miura yelled as he turned his attention towards the commotion. Sir. This foreigner is trying to invade the pitch. I keep telling him that the pitch is off limit for the time being, but he doesn't listen to me. He keeps on telling me that he was invited by Principal Miyamoto. And he's forcefully trying to invade the pitch. The guard replied while trying to stop Eric from entering the pitch. Let him go. I'm the one who invited him, Principal Miyamoto yelled. You've heard it from him now, so can you let me go now? Eric mumbled goofily. Upon hearing the words of Principal Miyamoto, he immediately released Eric from his grasp. Who's that foreigner, Principal Miyamoto? The reporters and the coaching staff questioned as they witnessed the sight of Eric. Since Eric was still a small-time agent, not many people knew about him yet. As of now, even in his home country only a handful of people knew about his identity. So the rumors were indeed true. He was the rumored European. Akashi mumbled in awe as he witnessed the sight of Eric. Except Hiro, Momo and Principal Miyamoto, everybody else were unaware of his identity. Some thought of him as a foreigner scout, some thought of him as a foreign coach, some thought of him as a foreign player, and some even thought of him as some kind of celebrity from foreign land. Everybody had a different impression of Eric. However, nobody thought of him as an agent. Since in football only the players and the coaches are well known among the masses, nobody thought of him as an agent. Even though agents, owners and coaching staffs other the coaches are an important part of the football, they aren't as famous as the players and coaches. Except few exceptional agents and owners, it's likely that most people wouldn't even know the name of the agent of their favorite players. He's one of the agent from Europe. Principal Miyamoto cheerfully exclaimed. You may have heard players like Jude Bellingham and Calvin Phillips who plays for teams like Birmingham and Leeds United in the Second Division League of English football. He's the one who manages them. And he has shown great interest in one of our talented player. Usually he doesn't sign Asian players, but this player had piqued his interest, and he's here to sign him. As the principal announced such a shocking statement, the reporters froze in their places. Their eyes bulging, they were left speechless. As Principal Miyamoto introduced Eric, everybody looked at him with their eyes wide open. They were having hard time to believe the words that came out from his mouth. So that's how you'll be going to use my name, huh? No wonder you told me to come at this moment. Eric smiled cheekily as he took a peek at Principal Miyamoto's face. In that moment Eric realized that beneath that cheerful and sincere face of Principal Miyamoto, there lied a cunning businessman. Principal Miyamoto had intentionally set their time of meeting at the time of interview, so that those two moments would overlap with each other and their meeting would be witnessed by the reporters. He had carefully devised his plan to promote the name of Eric to increase the reputation of his school. He wanted to make use of the reporters to advertise his school's name along with Eric without needing to pay extra money for the advertisement. It was like killing two birds with one stone. Indeed, I'm interested in one of their players, and I'm sure everybody could already guess the player I'm talking about. Although the deal hasn't been finalized yet. I indeed am interested in that player. Without concealing his interests, Eric cheerfully revealed his intentions in front of the reporters. He was as transparent as crystal clear water. As he announced his intentions, the reporters began to note his statement and began to click his photos. They wouldn't let such a golden opportunity to slip away from their hands. I'm sure he's talking about you. Akashi mumbled as he lightly pulled Hiro's shirt. Did you know about this already? Ah yeah. He called my mom yesterday. Hiro replied in a casual tone with a stoic face. Huh? And you didn't even tell me? As he heard that statement from Hiro, he looked at him with his eyes wide open. He looked at him in a way as if he had hidden from him that he was some kind of superhero. Hiro, however, showed no change in his facial expressions. Well, I mean, the deal hasn't been finalized yet, and also you do remember that you dozed off, right? Haha. Yeah. Akashi laughed awkwardly, but still you could have. Just as he was about to speak something, Coach Miura called out all the players to gather in front of the trophy. As the players gathered in front of the trophy, the reporters began to click their pictures. With that photo session, the interview came to an end and Coach Miura dismissed all the players. Everybody could go to their classes, except Hiro. Principal Miyamoto wants to discuss something with you, so you stay back, and everyone else, head to your classroom. Fill me the details about the deal later in the evening training session, Akashi mumbled as he left towards his classroom. The players then began to disperse. Except Hiro, all of them started to walk towards their classroom. It was fun working with you, Principal Miyamoto, a reporter cheerfully exclaimed as he shook hands with Principal Miyamoto. After exchanging few words and compliments, the reporters began to head out as well. This is a banger. I never expected to get such an amazing content for our channel. The reporters shared their happiness among each other as they made their way out of the pitch. Now then, shall we head to my office? Principal Miyamoto inquired while looking at Hiro and Eric. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Takahashi. I know I've introduced myself already, but please allow me to introduce myself once again. I'm Eric Parker, the guy who's interested in signing your son. Even though he had already introduced himself the day before, during the phone call, but despite that he introduced himself once again. Nice to meet you too, Mr. Parker. I'm Hiro's mom, Takahashi Momo. I'm sure I've already expressed my intentions, but let me repeat it again. Would you like to sign a deal with me for your son, Mrs. Takahashi? As Eric expressed his desire to sign Hiro, his mother took a peek at Hiro's face. Hiro slightly nodded his head, giving her his approval. Thank you, Mr. Parker, for showing such a great interest in my son, and I'm sure that you must have seen something in him. That's why you're so eager to sign him. But as a mother, I still can't help but worry about his well-being. So before signing the contract, we'd like to know your intentions moving forward. We'd also like to know how you'll help him improve going forward. Sounding all worried, she expressed her concerns without holding back anything. I understand, Mrs. Takahashi. As his mother, your concerns are justifiable, and I'd be happy to clear your doubts. You can ask me anything you are worried about. Eric assured her that he'd be willing to answer all her questions and clear all her doubts, and as such she took up on his offer and began to question him. After talking for a while, she was convinced to sign the contract. Eric had cleared all her doubts and given her satiable answers. His words convinced her to sign the contract. The duration of the contract was about 10 years and Eric would only take a meager commission fee of 8% for his service. And he had also included a special clause which stated that he would only take commission fee from him after he gets a transfer offer from Europe. If somehow he'd failed to get a transfer to Europe, he wouldn't charge them even a penny for his service. Meaning he would provide his service free of cost for the time being. The contract was totally in their favor and they had nothing to lose. Thus, without wasting time any further, they immediately signed the contract. With his mother acting as his benefactor, Hiro signed the contract. Pleased to have you on board, Hiro. Let's give our best. Eric laughed heartily as he greeted Hiro. Even though the contract was totally in favor of Hiro, Eric seemed really happy to sign him. As if he had gotten his hands on a diamond in rough, he was extremely excited to strike a deal with Hiro. You're gonna be the next big thing in Asia, Eric claimed as he locked his eyes with Hiro. Haha. Thank you for believing in me, but I'm not deserving of such praises. Hiro quickly rolled his eyes away from him and replied awkwardly. Eric's words made him uncomfortable. Ding. The host has completed the quest. A muscle-enhancing elixir has been awarded to the host for the completion of the quest. Please head to the inventory tab to know more about the elixir. As he signed the contract with Eric, the system notified him about the completion of the quest. The system had provided him with the quest to impress Eric and strike a deal with him. I've been really curious about this muscle-enhancing elixir from the time it showed in system. Finally I can get my hands on it. Does it improve my muscle density or flexibility? I need to inspect it thoroughly later in the night. He pondered as he heard the notification from the system. Knock. Knock. Just as they were conversing with each other, somebody knocked the door. Who is it? Principal Miyamoto yelled. Sir, it's me Suzuka. There's a call from the director of NBC channel. He wants to discuss something with you. The one who knocked the door was Suzuka-sensei, the personal assistant of Principal Miyamoto. Excuse me for a while. I'll need to attend that call. You guys keep on talking. I'll be back in a while. Principal Miyamoto spoke as he made his way out of his office. So what will you do after elementary school, Hiro? Will you be joining a middle school team or will you join a youth team? Eric inquired. Well, I haven't given much thought about it yet, Hiro replied. Do you want to hear my opinion, Hiro? Concerned about his indecision, Eric questioned. Without uttering a single word, he nodded his head. You should probably join a youth team. I know it sounds a bit ridiculous, but look at it this way. At youth team, though you'll still need to attend school, you can focus more on football. And I'm sure it'll be more beneficial to you if you join an academy. You could hone your skills and also experience the life of a pro. You could prepare yourself for the challenges you'll face moving forward. Eric suggested him to join a youth team rather than a middle school team. Young players in Europe join football academies as early as they can run. That's why they develop into world-class players. I'm not pressuring you to join an academy too, but I believe it'll be more beneficial to your career if you join a youth team instead of a school team. So do give it some thought, Hiro. Upon listening to Eric, he started to ponder. He started to think about the pros and cons of joining a youth team instead of a middle school team. Later in the night of that day, after finishing dinner and brushing his teeth, he was sitting at his study table pondering over the suggestions made by Eric. With the lights turned off, he was sitting all by himself. As he rested his head atop his study table, he lazily rolled his eyes outside the window. The clear night sky was aglow with the bright city lights. Even though he resided in the outskirts of the city, he couldn't avoid the bright lights coming from the city. While looking at the luminescent moon atop the city, he revealed a deep sigh. Sigh. Maybe I should take up on his suggestion and join an academy. I've already fulfilled one of my dream of lifting the national trophy. And my growth has kinda become stagnant too. Maybe the time has come for me to accept a new challenge and embark on a new journey, he thought while staring at the moon. Things have really changed in this life. I've lifted the national trophy, signed a professional contract with an agent from Europe and amassed quite a bit of wealth too. And all of it were possible only because of system and my choices. If I would have followed the same choices as in my previous life, maybe I would have been in the same situation as I was in my previous life. So yeah, I've made my decision. I'll join a youth team. He contemplated and made his decision after analyzing his success in his present life. As he made up his mind to join a professional youth team instead of a middle school team, he lifted his head up and rose up from his chair. Just as he was about to head to his bed, a sudden thought flashed in his mind. He remembered something. Oh, yeah. System. There was a reward for the completion of the quest. How could I forget about it? As he remembered about the reward from the earlier quest, he again pulled the chair and sat down. System activate. Just as he mumbled, the holographic blue screen of the system appeared in front of his eyes, once again. Basic information. Name. Takahashi Hiro. Age, 10 years old. Weight. 42 kg. Height, 4 feet 7 inch. Potential, SSS. Attribute point. 103 roulette tickets. 0 skills. Focus, perseverance. Copied talents. Roberto Carlos's free kick title. Master of the talent copying system. Regressor, one who possess ethereal talent. Attributes. Physical. 41 100ths. Grade. C. Dribbling. 78 100ths. Grade. B+. Pace. 52 100ths. Grade. C+. Passing. 63 100ths. Grade. B. Shooting. 61 100ths. Grade. B. Defending. 34 100ths. Grade. D+. Mentality. 57 100ths. Grade. C+. IQ. 77 100ths. Grade. B+. Overall grade. B. Witnessing his stats, he thought to himself, indeed my growth has remained quite the same for a long time. Although with this stat I could probably play in a youth team and maybe I could even play in lower division of professional leagues. While looking at his stats, he completely forgot about the fact that he was still a child, and even though his stats were pretty amazing, the world was filled with infinite variables. But I'm not here to analyze my stats. Today I'm here to look at my reward from previous quest. Let's see what amazing thing did we get from the system. While rubbing his palm against each other, He looked at the system with his greedy eyes and revealed a crooked smile on his face. Now where is the inventory tab? Unable to find the inventory tab, he began to scroll through the system in search of inventory tab. Finally, after scrolling for a while, his eyes landed on an icon which resembled a chest. Since it looks like a chest, maybe it's the inventory tab that I'm searching for, he muttered as he curiously clicked the chest icon. Just as he clicked the icon, the system redirected him to the inventory. His inventory consisted of 10 slots. There were 2 slots in the first row, 2 in the second, 2 in the third, 2 in the fourth and 2 in the fifth. Altogether there were 5 rows with 2 columns. His inventory was almost empty with only first slot occupied, and that slot was occupied by the muscle-enhancing elixir. Just when I thought that I figured out the working mechanism of the system, it gets even more complex. Like, does it update automatically or what? He mumbled as he found the inventory tab. He then clicked on the first slot. As he clicked on the first slot, suddenly a picture of round glass bottle with blue liquid in it became visible. The transparent glass bottle resembled a bottle of perfume. Beneath the picture, there were some texts written on it, which read as such. Muscle enhancing elixir. Effects. Increases muscle density and slightly increases recovery rate. Additional effect. +5 physical stat point and +3 pace stat point. Note. This is a one-time use item and it will expire in a week's time. Hence it's suggested that host should consume it as soon as possible. Use, leave. Damn. +5 physical stat points and +3 pace stat points. I could hardly raise 10 points by busting my ass on training for about a year. And this elixir is providing me 8 stat points from a single consumption. His voice shook as he read the description of the item. He couldn't believe his eyes that the item could grant him about a year's worth stats in one single consumption. I really don't know what to make of this situation. Just when did the system start being so generous? He wondered as he witnessed the benefits of the item provided by the system. Since there's a time limit, I should probably consume it right away. He immediately pressed on the use option to consume the item. Just as he pressed on the use option, the item disappeared from the slot of inventory. For 3 seconds nothing happened aside from the disappearance of the item from the slot of the inventory. But after 3 seconds passed, his body temperature suddenly started to rise and he began to sweat profusely. What's this? Why am I feeling so hot all of a sudden? He mumbled as he began to sweat profusely out of nowhere. Along with the rise in body temperature, he began to feel excruciating pain all over his body. His muscles started to convulse. Huff. Huff. Arg. Why does it feel like my body's crumbling? I guess the item is taking its effect. Seems like the benefits comes with a price. But I can handle this much pain. No pain, no gain. While trying to endure the pain, he revealed a cheeky smile as if he was prepared to endure the pain. At first the pain was tolerable, but as the time passed it began to intensify. However, he was still somehow holding his ground and enduring the pain. But the pain kept on intensifying. Unable to endure the pain, he fell down from his chair. Still unwilling to let out a single scream, he clenched his fist tightly and tried to endure the pain by gritting his teeth. But just like how a milk would spill after heating it for a while, he was also reaching his limit. After all, there's only so much pain a human could handle. Just as he was about to scream, he heard something. Abnormal activity detected. The system will forcibly put the host on mute until the end of the absorption process. Ah! He screamed in agony, but no sound came from his mouth. As the intolerable pain spread it all over his body, he felt like he's getting struck by needles all over his body. But since his voice was put on a mute, no matter how much he screamed, not even a single word came out from his mouth. However, that didn't mean that he didn't feel any pain at all. Unable to endure the pain, he was on the verge of losing consciousness. But somehow he persevered through the situation and endured the pain. Finally, after some time, the pain started to recede and he felt some relief. And as the pain dissipated, he stopped his screams and started to regain his strength. His voice returned back to normal as well. After going through that horrible experience, he tried to rise up. While taking the support of the floor and the chair, he struggled to raise his body from the floor. However, he was still too weak to stand straight, and thus, he leaned his back against the chair to prevent his body from falling down. As he leaned his back against the chair, he began to stare blankly at the posters in the wall in front. For a moment he couldn't think of anything. For some inexplicable reason his mind went completely blank for a while. And as he regained back his strength and returned to his normal self, he tried to stand straight on his legs. Arg! What in the Lord's name happened just now? He mumbled softly as he tried to reason with himself. So it's not easy to obtain a year's worth of stat in one single moment, huh? So to get a year's worth stat in a single sitting, you'd have to suffer years worth pain in one sitting as well. It's a fair trade, but I'm not sure if I want to go through it again. June 19, 2019 at around 8:30 a.m., Hiro arrived at his school all by himself. Because of some urgent work, his mother had to leave in a hurry that day. And thus, she couldn't accompany him all the way to the school. Hence she dropped him off at a certain distance away from the school and left in a hurry. Usually he'd always be late for school because of his early morning nap after the morning workout. But that day, because of his mother's work, she had rushed him to the school quite early in the morning. Just as he was about to reach the school gate, he heard a familiar voice calling out his name from behind him. Wondering who was calling him so early in the morning, he turned his head around to see the person who was calling him. As he turned around, he noticed Akashi sprinting towards him while shouting his name. Witnessing his appearance, Hiro paused midway and waited for him to catch up to him. It didn't take Akashi that long to reach him. He immediately caught up to him in a matter of some seconds. After reaching him, he paused for a while and began to pant heavily. For a while he couldn't speak anything because of his earlier sprint. And as his breathing stabilized, he lifted his head up and stretched his arms towards Hiro. He then rested his arms on top of Hiro's shoulder and looked at him as if he was about to do something totally idiotic. Hiro didn't like the look on his face. What's this moron going to do now? Hiro wondered as he puzzlingly casted his glance at Akashi's face. He was puzzled by the look on his face. Akashi then looked him in the eyes and revealed a crooked smile. The king of Ukami Elementary School's football team has graced us with his presence so early in the morning today. Has the sun risen from the west today? As he mumbled, he turned his gaze towards the direction of the sun. The sun's shining brilliantly and it hasn't risen from west too. So that means that the day of prophecy has finally descended upon us. And since His Majesty has graced us with his presence so early in the morning, it's only right for his peasants to bow their head and show respect to His Majesty. Akashi then bowed his head down while placing his right hand beneath his chest. Please accept this humble peasant's greetings, Your Majesty, he exclaimed in a loud voice. While Akashi was performing his idiotic roleplay, Hiro began to vigorously shake his head. Akashi's idiotic act was making him uncomfortable. Fortunately, nobody was present around there to witness Akashi's embarrassing roleplay. Now, stop with this ridiculous roleplay, Akashi, he exasperated as he tried to lift his head up. Just at that moment, out of nowhere Ichija Ryu made his appearance. Although he was still far from them, he witnessed that ridiculous roleplay of Akashi. Maybe both of them are actually a part of a gang. And I guess Hiro Senpai is the leader of that gang. So he was only trying to conceal his identity by misguiding me back then when I asked him if Akashi Senpai belonged to a gang. Ryu's voice shook as he witnessed the sight in front of him. Witnessing the sight of Akashi bowing his head in front of Hiro, he froze in his place and began to step back. Just then Hiro noticed Ryu. As he noticed Ryu, he forcibly lifted Akashi's head up and called out for Ryu. Ryu, where are you going? The school's this way, you know? Hiro yelled while pointing at school. Upon getting called by Hiro, a shiver ran down his spine. He then nervously lifted his head up and faced Hiro. Now what should I tell him? I don't want to face him. He looks so scary right now. He began to have weird thoughts about Hiro. After witnessing that incident, he began to imagine Hiro as some kind of boss of a gang who only pretended to be nice. Because of the earlier incident with Akashi, he started to get anxious while facing Hiro. And even though Hiro only asked him simple questions, he misinterpreted them in a negative way. From his perspective, Hiro's words read as such. Where are you going without showing your respect to me? Now accompany me to school or else you'll get beaten. Paralyzed by the fear of getting beaten by Hiro inside his head, he froze in his place. While rolling his eyes here and there, he began to think of excuses to avoid Hiro. I just dropped my money, so, I was just going back to retrieve it, he stammered while replying. Oh, okay. Do you want my help? Hiro expressed his desire to help him. Hearing Hiro's reply, Ryu shook his head and immediately ran away. Why's he acting so strange? Hiro mumbled as he witnessed Ryu's weird behavior. I bet he thinks you're some kind of boss of a gang. Ha ha ha. Akashi, who was standing beside him, chuckled. And whose fault is it? Hiro intoned as he rolled his eyes towards Akashi and gave him a cold stare. Ha ha ha. Sorry about that, Akashi goofily apologized. Sigh. Whatever. I'll clear his doubts later in the evening training. Now let's head inside. Hiro revealed a deep sigh and shrugged off Akashi's behavior. Chatter. Chatter. As they headed inside the school, they noticed many students gathered in front of the notice board. What's happening over there? Confused by the commotion taking place in front of him, he questioned. Maybe they're waiting for His Majesty's arrival. Ha ha ha. Akashi chuckled. Yeah. Now stop with your jokes or else I'll tell Sumi Nanami that you have a crush on her. No, please don't do that. I'll stop it right away, so please don't do that. Akashi began to beg as Hiro mentioned him about revealing his secret to Sumi Nanami. Sumi Nanami was the student council president of Ukami Elementary School. With long straight black hair and upturned eyes with black pupil, she always wore a gentle smile on her face. Always greeting everybody with a smile, she was a social butterfly who was well liked by everyone at the school. While they were goofing around, suddenly from behind them Sumi Nanami made her appearance. About 4 feet 3 inches tall with a slender figure, she was a year older than him. Her milky white skin complemented her small nose and glossy red lips. Especially the bangs above her eyes which covered her forehead further highlighted her beauty. A combination of pleasant personality with an ethereally beautiful face, she was very famous in their school. Along with Hiro, she was one of the 2 personalities who were extremely famous throughout Ukami Elementary School. Good morning, Hiro. She greeted him with a smile on her face. Just as she made her appearance, Akashi went completely silent. With his cheeks turning red, he stood straight with his chest puffed out. Oh, it's you Nanami. Good morning. Hiro casually greeted her back without putting any emphasis on his words. You have arrived quite early today, Hiro. She began to strike a conversation with him in her soft voice. Yeah. He gave her one-word answer and tried to shrug her off. Because both of them were well-known personalities in their school, they had encountered each other several times in the past. And Nanami being an extrovert always tried to converse with him whenever she encountered him. At first Hiro tried to ignore her as much as possible, but no matter how much he tried to ignore her, she wouldn't stop trying to befriend him. And thus because of her continuous pestering, he befriended her thinking that she would stop after he agreed to her request. But on the contrary, she started to blabber even more. While she was trying to converse with him, Akashi began to poke him. Ah, Nanami. This here is my friend Nobara Akashi. Hiro introduced Akashi to Nanami. Oh, hello. Aren't you the defender of our school's football team? She exclaimed as she tried to recognize his face. Yes, indeed. I'm the defender of our school's football team. I didn't know that you knew about me. Akashi intoned while revealing a nervous smile on his face. How would I not know you when you're always running around, Hiro? She thought to herself while curling her lips inside her mind. However, on the outside, she didn't let go of her smile. How could I not know the defender who puts his life on the line to protect our team's goal? Hearing such praises from his crush, Akashi's heart rate spiked as he began to visualize the 2 of them going out on dates together. He was thrilled to hear such praises from his crush. He felt like he was over the moon. By the way, what's happening over there? Hiro interrupted. As he interrupted Akashi's conversation with his crush, Akashi began to stare at him with his eyes wide open. It's just that the news regarding the transfer of Takefusa Kubo to the world-renowned club, Real Madrid, has been pasted on the notice board. That's why everybody's gathered there to read the news. Seems like the prophecy was meant for someone else. Akashi whispered in delirium as he heard the news from Sumi Nanami. With the transfer of Takefusa Kubo to Real Madrid, changes were taking place in Japanese football. Just a year before Vissel Kobe, a professional football club which played in Japanese League One, had secured the signature of one of the greatest midfielder in the world. It had managed to sign Andres Iniesta from Barcelona. Also at that same year in 2018's World Cup, Japanese men's national team had performed really well in the tournament. Even though they had been placed in the group with the likes of Colombia, Senegal and Poland, they had managed to defeat Colombia, a country from South America which performed really well in the previous World Cup. With James Rodriguez winning the Golden Boot, they had managed to reach quarter-finals of the World Cup 2014. Japanese team also managed to pull out a draw against Senegal, one of the powerhouse football nation of African continent. However, they fell short against Poland as they suffered a narrow defeat of 1-0. Even so, They still managed to secure a spot on the round of 16 by placing second in their group. While both Senegal and Japan were tied in score points, they managed to place above Senegal on overall goal difference and barely clinched the second spot in their group. In round of 16 they faced against Belgium, the team which was ranked first in FIFA men's team ranking that year. With all the players from its golden generation being at their absolute peak, they were one of the favorites to win the tournament. Belgium, with the likes of Lukaku, Eden Hazard, Thibaut Courtois, Kevin De Bruyne and many other world-class players, was a team packed with stars. Even so, they held their ground against that star-packed team of Belgium and demonstrated a spectacular game worthy of praises. However, they still couldn't pull up a victory against that star-packed team of Belgium and suffered a defeat of 3-2. And just like that, their journey in 2018 World Cup came to an end. And even though their journey came to an end that year, everybody could see that football was developing rapidly in Japan. As Nanami Sumi broke the news regarding the transfer of Takefusa Kubo to Real Madrid, something clicked in him. I must make my decision today as well. Some months ago, Eric had notified him about the interests from several youth teams from all over Japan. However, he had been delaying his decision since he still had more than a year left before he could graduate from elementary school. But now that the tides were getting stronger, he'd have to either jump on board or get left behind, and if he wanted to accomplish his goals, he couldn't afford to stay still. While thinking about the changes taking place in Japanese football, he had been staring blankly at the ground beneath his feet. Hiro. Hiro. Upon seeing him staring blankly at the ground for a long time, Nanami began to call his name. As she called his name, he abruptly lifted his head up and turned his gaze towards her. Her brows drawn together, she began to ask questions him as she moved closer to him. Are you not feeling well, Hiro? Her words brought him back to his senses. Oh, yeah, I'm all right. He took a step back and blurted out as he regained back his senses. She then paused her movement as she noticed him stepping back. Oh, okay, she mumbled and retracted her step. Nanami. Suzuka-sensei is looking for you. A female student with glasses who came out nowhere exclaimed as she noticed Nanami conversing with Hiro and Akashi. Wait for a minute. I'll go to her office right away, she intoned. I'll have to leave for now. So let's continue our conversation some other times. Well then, it was nice talking to you, Hiro-kun, Nobara-kun. She wished them well while revealing a gentle smile in her face and left the scene. And as soon as she left, Akashi, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly opened his mouth. Man. There's something really magical in her smile. Whenever she smiles, my heart starts to beat faster. I just can't stop looking at her. Akashi intoned, sounding all excited. Yeah. Now let's head to class. He couldn't care less about her smile or her beauty. All he cared about was improving himself and achieving his goals. Later at that night, he was sitting all by himself at his study table scribbling something on a sheet of paper. In that sheet of paper, names of several teams were written in it. The names written on the paper read as such. Vissel Kobe, Yokohama F. Marinos, FC Tokyo, Urawa Red Diamonds, Kashima Antlers, Cerezo Osaka, Gamba Osaka and Kawasaki Frontale. If I want to improve myself and debut early, these are the teams I should choose. He contemplated as he looked at the list of teams he prepared. I'll only be 12 years old by the time I graduate elementary school, and because of that, they might place me in U15 category instead of U18. And in U15 category the previous year's winner was FC Tokyo. However, Kashima Antlers also managed to reach the final in the previous year's U18 category. Also, if I join Kawasaki Frontale, I might even get to play with Kaoru Mitoma for a brief moment. And if I join Vissel Kobe, I might get to play with Iniesta too. Damn, every team looks promising. He rubbed his hair with both of his hands as he tried to choose the team he should join to elevate his career further. Even though he was scouted by most of the teams, not everyone granted him direct entry in their club. Some of them had placed some conditions as well. They had placed a condition that required him to pass their trials if he wanted to enroll in their academy. Arg. What should I do? Unable to decide on the team, he kept on staring at the list he prepared. Feeling restless, he hopped on his bed. With his face facing towards the ceiling, he held the list above his head. Kawasaki Frontale and Vissel Kobe looks the more promising option. But those teams are already packed with stars and I'm not sure if I'll even get to play among such conditions. So I should probably look for the team where I can get decent playing minutes. He mumbled as he began to weigh the pros and cons of joining the top flight team. But no, I've promised myself that I won't run away from challenges. If I don't get playing minutes for being new, then I'll just have to demonstrate my skills and earn myself a spot in the starting 11. His eyes glowed with determination as he clenched his fist. Success is earned, not granted. However, while feeling motivated, he completely forgot that he was holding the list with the name of the teams in his hands. As he clenched his fist tightly, he crushed the list in his hands. "Ah, I completely forgot about the list," he mumbled as he began to retrieve the list back to normal. "If I'm gonna join a team, then I'm gonna join the best one. Yes, I've made my decision. I'll give Eric the name of 5 clubs that I want to join. And I'm sure he can discuss with the clubs and find out the best one for me. Let's leave the work of pros to pros." Saying such, he circled the name of 5 clubs from the list and stored the list inside his drawer. "I'll have to work more harder now. Since I have enough points to upgrade the system, I should probably upgrade the system as well. That way I can gain more resources from the system and I can even unlock more features of the system. So it's decided I'll upgrade the system too," he mumbled as he began to think of upgrading the system. Early in the morning, as he woke up from his sleep, he thought of calling Eric, but then again, he remembered that Eric was no longer in Japan. Eric had already departed for England after few days from the day of the contract signing. And since Eric was in England at that moment, there was a time difference of about 9 hours between the two countries. With Japan being 9 hours ahead of England, calling him that early in the morning meant disturbing Eric's sleep by calling him at the middle of the night. And thus he refrained himself from calling Eric early in the morning and decided to call him later in the night. What time would it be in England right now? Since we have a 9-hour time difference and it's 5 a.m. here, it's probably only 8 p.m. over there right now. But knowing Eric, he's probably asleep at this moment. Since Eric started his day early in the morning, he used to sleep before 9 every day if there wasn't any work that required his attention. June 20, 2019, London, England. Inside a neat and tidy spacious room at the 3rd floor of a 5-storied building in Baker Street, Eric was seen walking back and forth while going through some kind of documents. Flipping page after page, he was carefully reading each page of documents from the bundle of documents he held in his hands. Occasionally he would stop at his immaculate office table to take a sip from the cup of hot coffee placed atop his table. His unusual action continued for a while. Just as he finished reading the final page of the document from the bundle of documents which he held in his hand, he stopped at his table and placed the documents atop the table. Just then, as he was about to sit on the chair beside the table, he heard a knocking sound from the door in front of his work table. "Knock, knock. Yes, come in," he mumbled as he sat down in his chair. "Eric the First heard that you wanted to see me?" A dark-skinned individual with a short wavy hair spoke as he opened the door. "Yes, Lucas. I've got something to discuss with you. Come have a seat." The individual with short wavy hair who walked inside his office was Lucas Silva, a 26-year-old Brazilian player who played as a defensive midfielder for the English club Fulham in the EFL Championship. Lucas was slightly taller than average people with the height of 6 feet 2 inches. Weighing almost 75 kilograms, he had a very well-toned muscular body. Dressed in shorts and black nylon t-shirt, his neatly trimmed beard gave him a handsome manly appearance. However, his black t-shirt could hardly conceal his robust muscles underneath. As impressive as his upper body muscles were, his lower body muscles were even more amazing. Overall, Lucas Silva was a muscular, dark-skinned Brazilian with a robust body and handsome appearance. As Lucas sat in the sofa placed in front of the table, Eric revealed a grin on his face. "I've got a good news for you, Lucas. Crystal Palace is showing great interest in you, Lucas, and they want to sign you." While resting his hands atop the table, he looked Lucas in his eyes and told him about the interest from Crystal Palace. "That's some great news, Eric. But what about Fulham? Have they given the green light for further discussion?" As happy as he was to get an offer from Crystal Palace, he was more concerned about the decision of his present club. Without their approval, the transfer would have been really hard to pull off, and he couldn't even pressure the club because of his love for the club. Even though his contract was expiring within a year, he wanted to leave the club on positive terms. He didn't want to leave the club in which he played for 3 seasons on bad terms. About that, I've scheduled a meeting with the sports director of the club later in the evening, but I've heard from Crystal Palace that it's been already about a week since they submitted their offer for the transfer. However, they still haven't heard anything from Fulham. But you don't have to worry about it, Lucas. I'll figure out something and I'll definitely pull off this transfer. Since his contract was nearing its expiration, the club had tried to extend their contract with him. However, Lucas wanted to leave the club and look for new challenges. And Eric had clearly told them about Lucas's desire to leave the club about some months ago, and he had requested the club to put him on transfer or else he'll have to leave for free. However, the club was reluctant to let go of one of its star performer. They wanted to extend Lucas's contract and tie him with the club for another 3/4 seasons. Ring. 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 While he was talking to Lucas, he was interrupted by the ring on his phone. "Give me a minute, Lucas," he intoned as he stretched his hands inside his pocket and took his smartphone out. Despite having a telephone installed in his office, he had also provided his private number to a handful of peoples to call him privately when needed. And among those handful of peoples, one was Hiro. "Oh, it's Hiro," Eric exclaimed with a wide smile on his face as he noticed the number which was calling him. "Hello. Eric speaking." "Hello Eric, it's me Hiro. I know it's you. I've saved your number in my phone," Eric mumbled while leaning back on his chair. "Oh, are you free right now? I've got something to discuss with you," Hiro asked Eric if he was busy at that moment. "Wait a moment," Eric replied as he lifted himself. He then casted a glance at Lucas and spoke. "Lucas, can you wait until I hang up this call?" Lucas simply nodded his head and agreed to his request without a bit of hesitation. "Yeah, I'm free. So tell me, what are you going to talk about?" "I've decided to join a professional youth team, but I can't decide which club to join, so would you lend me a hand regarding that matter?" Without beating around the bush, Hiro exclaimed his desire bluntly. He wanted Eric to help him with the selection of club that would be suitable to him. "Yes. Why not? Have you picked the teams you'd like to join, or do I have to pick it for you?" Eric inquired. No, you don't have to do that much, Eric. I've already prepared a list of 5 clubs. So I just want you to help me to select a club among those 5 clubs that would fit my playstyle," Hiro requested. "Oh, okay. Then go on. Tell me the name of those 5 clubs. I'll look into them and provide you with an answer in about 2 hours. As Eric agreed to his request, Hiro opened his drawer and pulled out the list he had prepared the previous night. "Now I'm going to tell the names, Eric," he mumbled while staring at the list. "Give me a second, I'll note it down." Eric took out a blank sheet of paper and a pen from his drawer. "Okay, go on," he mumbled as he leaned closer to the table and prepared to write. "Yokohama F. Marinos, Kawasaki Frontale, Kashima Antlers, Urawa Red Diamonds and Vissel Kobe." "Did you get it all, Eric, or do you want me to repeat again?" Hiro inquired as he told him about the list of teams he prepared for himself. Scribble. All noted. And you have even included the 3 teams which I personally think are the best ones for you," Eric intoned as he let go of the pen in his hands. "Can you look into this clubs and contact me after 2 hours, Eric?" "Yeah, just give me some moment. I'll call you after some time." "Okay then, thank you for your help, Eric. I'll hang up the call now. Have a good day." Hiro wished him well and hung up the call. "You too have a good day, Hiro," he mumbled as he hung up the call from his side. "Ah, it's probably night there. Ha ha ha." Eric began to laugh all by himself as he remembered the time difference between the 2 countries. "Seems like the person you were talking to means a lot to you, Eric," Lucas exclaimed as he noticed Eric laughing all by himself. "Also, was it Japanese that you were speaking, Eric?" "Ha ha ha. Yeah, he's indeed someone special," Eric chuckled while putting the phone back in his pocket. "He's a talent which I've scouted recently on my trip to Japan. The way he sees the field and exploits the spaces. His otherworldly first touch and ball control. His dribbling accompanied by his explosive pace. Everything about him is top-notch." Eric kept on singing the praises of Hiro in front of Lucas without stopping. While Eric was singing the praises of Hiro, Lucas kept on staring at him with a smile on his face. The words of Eric had piqued his interest on the player which he was mentioning about. "You might think that I'm over-exaggerating, but trust me, Lucas, he has the capability to be one of the best in the world." Finally he finished his sentence as he paused to take a moment to breathe. "Whoa. That's a lot of praises. If you're complimenting him that much, then he must be quite an extraordinary player," Lucas murmured while staring at Eric in awe. "So when are you planning to present that talent to Europe?" Lucas questioned. "Maybe in about 8 years." As he heard Eric's reply, Lucas abruptly rose from his seat. "Huh, 8 years? That long? Don't tell me that he's a 13-year-old boy now," Lucas blurted out in disbelief. No, he's not a 13-year-old, Eric replied casually. "Then why so long, Eric? Lucas questioned while lowering himself to take his seat once again. Well, he's only 10 years old right now, so it'll take him about 8 years to reach Europe. Once again Eric replied casually as if it wasn't a big deal. The casual tone of Eric had caught him off guard, and thus after hearing his reply, he murmured without thinking. So he's only 10 years old, huh? While placing his left hand on his chin and with his eyes closed, he slightly nodded his head. Suddenly his eyes widened as he realized something. 10 years old? The frequency of his tone increased as he abruptly rose from his seat in disbelief once again. He's still a kid, Eric. Lucas intoned while staring at Eric with his eyes wide open. Upon witnessing the expression on Lucas's face, Eric rose from his chair and began to walk towards Lucas. Indeed, he's still a kid, Lucas, but just because he's still a kid doesn't mean his talent isn't real. Remember, Barcelona had discovered about Messi's potential while he was still a kid as well. Eric mumbled while walking towards him. I'm not doubting your claims, Eric, but how amazing can a kid who's only 10 years old be for you to compliment him that much? Lucas inquired. Upon hearing his questions, Eric took his phone out from his pocket and clicked on the YouTube. He then began to search for Hero's YouTube channel's name on the search bar. You'll know once you look at this video, Eric exclaimed while handing over his phone to Lucas. Except some moment of entertainment, what's even there to learn from a kid's YouTube video? Lucas mumbled while turning his attention towards the video. He wasn't the type of person who liked to waste his time by spending time on social media. Most of the times, he preferred to spend his time in gym and train himself. He simply was the type of person who'd rather spend time improving himself than waste his time on something meaningless. In simple words, he was a hard-working person who was very serious about his career. And as soon as he had heard about the age of the player which Eric was mentioning about, his interest in him had already died down. But despite that, he had reluctantly agreed to watch the video for Eric's sake. And by no means was he interested in watching a kid's YouTube video. And if it weren't for Eric's pestering, he wouldn't have even glanced at the video when there was a much serious issue left to be discussed. They still had to discuss about Lucas's transfer to Crystal Palace. So he's performing a crossbar challenge, huh? Lucas mumbled while gazing at the phone in his hand. In that video, Hero had performed 2 challenges and crossbar challenge was the first one. He had tried to hit the crossbar continuously from 5 different spots in that video. 3 from outside the box and 1 each from either side of the corner. Not bad. Lucas mumbled after witnessing his first kick from the middle spot of outside the box. But is it all that he's capable of? The next 2 kicks were from the right and left edge of the D box. And he hit the crossbar from both the spots as well. 3 on 3. Lucas mumbled as he witnessed him accurately hitting the crossbar from 3 different spots consecutively. Oh, he's heading for corner now. That's a bit challenging. Lucas mumbled while watching Hero walk towards the left corner of the pitch for his 4th kick. And he makes it 4 on 4. But it must be a fluke. Or he might have even took several kicks before posting the video on YouTube. Still unwilling to accept Hero's talent, he wasn't impressed by his challenges. Hero had precisely hit the crossbar from 5 different spots in that video without missing a single one. And for the next challenge, he had performed free kick challenge in which he had taken 3 free kicks from 3 different spots on the field. The last one being from the kickoff spot. If it isn't staged or edited, then I must say that boy is indeed talented, but if it's staged, then all I can say is that you've been fooled, Eric. Lucas exclaimed while returning him his phone back. What do you take me for, Lucas? I'm not someone stupid who can't differentiate between an influencer and an athlete. I've seen him play live with my own eyes. And in this video you haven't even seen a tenth of what he's capable of. Eric exasperated while returning back to his chair. At around 9 p.m. while being seated at his study table, Hero kept on looking at his phone, time and again, awaiting for Eric's call. Continuously tapping his foot against the floor, he couldn't stop himself from checking his phone. Eric said that he would call me in 2 hours. But it's already been 2 hours, so why is he not calling me? Hero murmured while staring at his phone. Should I call him instead? Hero mumbled while stretching his fingers towards Eric's phone number. No, it'll make me look impatient. Let's just wait for a little more, and if he doesn't call me in an hour, I'll call him myself. Saying such, he pulled his hand back and rose from his chair to divert his attention from his phone, and somehow he managed to refrain himself from calling Eric. Now what should I do to keep myself occupied for an hour? He wondered. Maybe I can juggle the ball for about an hour. Saying such, He walked towards the ball which was kept beside his closet. And just as he was about to lift the ball up, he remembered that it was still night time. Thank God, I didn't hit the ball or else I would have woken up my parents. So now what should I do to pass time? He wondered after barely stopping himself from juggling the ball so late in the night at his room. Maybe I should watch the highlight of the previous year's World Cup final. He mumbled as he sat down and grabbed his phone. Man, I want to represent my country too. He whispered as he witnessed Mbappe winning the World Cup at the only age of 19. I should probably aim for the 2023's U17 World Cup. At that time I would be 14 by then. He began to imagine himself already in the pitch wearing his country's jersey. Ring. 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 Just then, while he was dreaming about making his debut for his national team, his phone started to ring. Coming back to his senses, he looked at his phone and noticed Eric's number. Eric was finally calling him after 2.5 hours. Hello Eric. He spoke as he brought his phone closer to his ear after picking Eric's call. Hero. I've talked with the coaches of the 5 teams you've mentioned about, and although each and every one of their projects seems promising, I have narrowed the list onto 2 from the original list of 5 teams. Eric replied. You should go with either Kawasaki Frontale or Yokohama F. Marinos. Eric gave his decision. Although both of the teams wants to test you out before signing you. But you should go with either of the 2 teams. Based on the performance you show them during the test, they are willing to provide you with full scholarship that would cover your expenses for dorm fee, school fees, travel expenses and everything you'd require during your stay at the club. June 27, 2019 at around 8:10 a.m. While Hiro was packing his cleats and shin guards in his bag, he heard his mother's voice coming from downstairs. Hiro, hurry up. We'll miss the flight if you continue to delay us like this. Just as he heard her voice, he quickly stuffed his towel and spare clothes inside his backpack. After stuffing his spare clothes and cleats in his backpack, he zipped his bag. He then hurriedly grabbed a random shirt from his closet and began to get dressed. After getting dressed, he grabbed his backpack and left his room in a hurry. Careful. Careful. You might trip and injure yourself, she mumbled as she saw him running down the stairs in a hurry. Even so, he didn't slow down his descent and continued to run down the stairs without paying any attention towards her words. Geez. Just why do you always get so late? She exasperated while looking at him. You know that we're only going there for you, and yet you're acting such irresponsibly. If you hadn't slept back again after I woke you up, we wouldn't have been rushing like this, she continued to nag him. As usual, he had fallen back to sleep immediately after she had left his room after waking him up. I'll wake up on time from next time, Mom, but let's hurry up for now, or else we'll really miss the flight, he mumbled as he finished tying his laces. Hiro and his mother were heading towards Kawasaki City, which was located in Kanagawa Prefecture, to visit the club Kawasaki Frontale. About a week ago, he had agreed to go with Eric's decision of checking out both the clubs which he had shortlisted for him. And thus, for that reason, he was leaving for Kawasaki City with his mother to visit the one of the shortlisted club by Eric. While his father couldn't come with them because of his work, his mother was accompanying him on his trip to Kawasaki. Mom, is Dad really not going to come with us? He questioned his mother while they were preparing to leave the house. Their trip to Kawasaki was a 3-day event, though he was only required to show up at the club for a day. And he had 2 days left to spare. And in those leftover time, he could go sightseeing and enjoy his time at the city as much as he wanted. Thus, he wanted all of them to go together so that all of them could spend some quality family time together in a new city. Dad's company is really short on staff this time around, so we'll have to go by ourselves this time. But he has promised to go with you for your visit to the next club, she replied with a smile on her face. Even though she too was upset by his absence, she kept the smile on her face nonetheless. She didn't want to show her worried expression to her son, and thus while replying to him, she forced a smile on her face. After about half an hour later, they arrived at the entrance of the airport in a cab. As the cab drove inside the airport, he noticed a lot of people in the airport while peeking outside his window. And even though it wasn't a weekday, the airport was still flooded with peoples going in and out of the airport. Here is your 5,000 yen. She handed the cab fare to the driver after he finished unloading their luggage. Thank you for riding in my cab. After receiving the money, the cab driver wished them well and stormed outside the airport. Now should we hurry up inside as well? His mother inquired as she took out a handlebar from the luggage bag. He nodded his head and started to walk towards the airport alongside his mother. After reaching the waiting room of the airport, his mother left him all by himself to go to the counter to verify their tickets. "May I have your tickets, ma'am?" a young lady who was wearing a maroon-colored uniform asked as she approached the counter. "Here you go." She took out tickets for 2 people from inside her black-colored designer handbag with a logo of Sakura flower embedded on it and handed it over to the receptionist. "Let's see. Your flight is scheduled for 9:30 a.m. Even though there's still time left for the flight to depart. You're late, ma'am," the receptionist exclaimed as she began to verify her tickets. "I'm sorry," she apologized upon hearing her words. "All verified. Here you go, ma'am. Try to be on time from next time onwards. You might miss your flight if you don't reach the airport on time." The receptionist from the counter advised her to be punctual from next time onward, while she handed back the tickets to her after verifying it. "Thank you for your service." She thanked the receptionist after receiving the tickets and walked towards the waiting room where Hiro was waiting for her. "Passenger for the plane Kawasaki 0H6D that's going to take off from Tokushima to Kawasaki at 9:30 a.m. are requested to head towards the boarding area." "That would be our flight," she mumbled after hearing the announcement. "Let's go." After passing through a security checkup and customs, they headed towards the boarding area where they boarded a bus that would take them to the plane. After traveling for about 2.5 hours, they finally landed on an airport near Kawasaki City. "Sigh. Finally here." Hiro revealed a deep sigh and began to stretch his body. After reclaiming their luggage, they began to walk towards the waiting room. While walking towards the waiting room, they noticed a man dressed in black suit holding a board with Hiro's name on it. "That uncle must be the guy sent by the club," Hiro exclaimed while pointing at the man with the board with his name on it. Since they were new to the city, the club had hired a person to act as their guide, and that man who was holding the board with his name written on it was the person hired by the club to act as their guide during their time at the city. "Takahashi Hiro. That's me," he spoke while approaching the man with the board. "Hello, Hiro. I'm Yoichiro Musashi, the guy hired by Kawasaki Frontale to act as your guide during your stay at the city." That man dressed in the black suit introduced himself. "And this here is my mother Takahashi Momo. You can address her as Mrs. Takahashi." While pointing at his mother, he introduced his mother to the man in front. "Hello, Mrs. Takahashi." He greeted her while bowing his head. His mother greeted him back while bowing her head as well. "I have parked my car outside, so shall we head to your hotel first?" he inquired. "May I carry your luggage to the car, ma'am?" "It's all right, Mr. Musashi. I can carry the luggage by myself." She denied his help and insisted on carrying her luggage by herself. "Well, if you say so, but it's my job to assist you, Mrs. Takahashi. So I insist you to hand me the luggage," he asked politely. Even though she had denied his help previously, he was adamant to do the job he was hired for. Hearing such polite words from him, she could no longer refuse his help, and hence she agreed to let him carry their luggage towards the car. After about 20 minutes of driving, they arrived at their hotel. "Damn. The hotel looks too bland," Hiro mumbled while rubbing his eyes. He couldn't believe that it was the place where they were going to spend 2 nights. "Mom, is this the correct hotel?" he questioned his mother while pointing at the hotel in front. With nothing fancy, the hotel looked very ordinary. Ordinary to the point where one could hardly tell if it was even a hotel or not. And if not for the sign of hotel, people might even mistook it for someone's house. The hotel was a 3-storied building made up of red bricks and tiles on the slanted roof atop with a small lawn in front. "Yes. It's the hotel where we'll be staying during our time at the city," his mother addressed to his claims while taking out the luggage from the car. And just as she took out the luggage, she narrowed her eyes towards him and exclaimed, "Do you have any problem with my arrangements?" But why such bore? Just as he was about to speak something, he paused midway after noticing her gaze towards him. "No, ma'am. I've got no problems." He quickly changed his sentence after witnessing her gaze. "Good. It was the only cheap hotel I could find on the internet after all," she exclaimed as she diverted her attention towards the hotel. Except for the guide hired by the club, they weren't sponsored for their trip to Kawasaki by the club. And his mother had to pay the expenses out of her own pocket. Thus, she had tried to cut as much expense as possible by selecting the cheapest hotels. After spending almost an entire day, sleeping in his hotel room, his eyes opened as the golden rays of the setting sun fell on his eyes after piercing its way through the gaps of the curtains. While still lying on his bed with his eyes open, he leisurely turned his head around and strolled his eyes towards the window at his right. Even though the long red-colored curtains dangled freely in front of the window while blocking the rays of sunlight coming from outside, somehow from the gaps of the curtains the light from the sun still managed to find its way inside the room. And those strands of lights which pierced through the gaps of the curtains was painting the whole room in warm colors. The familiar yet unfamiliar room which he had been staying in for less than 6 hours was dimly lit in golden hues. With nothing fancy, the room consisted of 2 beds which were placed side by side with only a single drawer separating the 2 of them from merging into a single bed. The gap between the 2 beds was barely enough to fit 2 people when placed side by side. At the end of his feet, at a certain distance away from his bed, there lied a simple closet made up of wood. With nothing besides 2 beds, a closet and a drawer, the only attraction in the room was a white-colored flower vase made up of porcelain clay with patterns of blue hibiscus embedded on it, placed atop the drawer. After looking around for a while, he rose up from his bed and walked towards the window. He then pushed aside the curtains and opened the window. Just as he opened the window, a gust of cold breeze rushed towards him from the open window. While trying to shade his eyes from the cold breeze, he immediately lowered his head and covered his eyes with his right hand. His curly black hair and the curtains dangled and danced as the gust of cold breeze blew past them. Finally, as he lowered his hands and opened his eyes, he noticed his mother seated in the front yard alongside with the owner of the restaurant, who happened to be an elderly old woman. Since he had only met her for a brief moment while checking in, he didn't have much information about her. The only thing he knew about her was her name. "What is she talking with Mrs. Mori?" he mumbled while looking at them. Seeing his mother and the owner cheerfully gossiping with each other while sipping tea in the front yard, he wondered what they were gossiping about. Those cheerful smiles made him curious about the topic of their gossip. Growl. Just as he was observing his mother and the owner of the hotel gossiping in the front yard, his stomach made a growling noise. "Seems like I need to eat something first," he mumbled while grabbing his stomach. Since he hadn't ate anything since morning besides the light meal provided in the airplane, it was only natural for his stomach to make such weird noises. After that, he rushed downstairs towards the dining hall to get something to eat, and since the dining hall was just at the right side of the entrance of the first floor, he had remembered its location earlier when they checked in for their room. While walking down the stairs, he noticed a young girl with pale white skin and straight black hair sitting in the reception desk. Upon casting his gaze at her, he started to wonder about the identity of the girl in front. After all, her face was new to him and he hadn't seen her during his earlier visit. And just as he was about to walk past her, the girl from the reception spoke. "You must be Hiro, right?" Yes," he replied while slightly nodding his head. "How did you know my name?" he questioned her while slowly wandering his eyes towards her. Since he hadn't introduced himself to her, it was only natural for him to wonder how she had came to know about his identity. "You and your mother are the only guests staying in the hotel today, so it's only natural for me to know your name," she replied while smiling. Since most of the people preferred to stay at a fancy restaurant during their trip away from home, the hotel that they were staying in wasn't famous among the people and it was almost completely empty at the time of their stay. And because of its dull appearance, people normally avoided that hotel even though it was way cheaper than other fancy restaurants. And that day only he and his mother were staying at the hotel. "That makes sense," he mumbled after hearing her answers. "Are you one of the employees who works in this hotel?" "Haha. Yeah, you can say that," she chuckled while replying. "But aren't you a bit too young to work?" he questioned her, feeling all confused. Since her appearance was that of a young girl in her teens, he couldn't help but wonder her reason behind working in that hotel. "Oh my, are you asking me about my age? You do know that it's rude to ask a girl about her age?" Her eyes widened as she covered her mouth while looking at him. She then started to tease him in her girly voice. "Also, aren't you moving way too fast? I mean, you don't even know my name yet." She continued to tease him, while hiding her smiles behind her hands. Upon hearing her replies, his cheeks started to turn as red as an apple. Blinking his eyes rapidly, his heart skipped a beat as he noticed her smiling face. He began to have trouble maintaining eye contact with her, and thus, he diverted his gaze away from her. However, her teasing continued, and just when he was about to open his mouth, he heard a voice from behind him. "Oh, Hiro. You're awake." The voice belonged to his mother. As he turned behind to face his mother after hearing her voice, he found her standing in front of the entrance alongside the owner of the hotel. With a relatively small stature of 5 feet 2 inches, her time-worn pale skin was covered with wrinkles around her eyes and temple. While looking at her, One could hardly ignore her winter white hair atop her head and the mole beside her monolid eyes. They were the defining features of her face. Aiko. When will you stop with your jokes? Mrs. Mori spoke while looking at the girl at the receptionist desk. I didn't mean to tease him, Grandma, but what can I do? His reaction was just too cute to ignore. The girl at the reception desk replied while still laughing. Sorry for my granddaughter's immaturity. Despite being an adult, she still acts like an immature kid. Mrs. Mori apologized to Hiro for her granddaughter's behavior. The girl sitting in front of him was Aiko Mori, the granddaughter of the owner of the hotel. Oh no. You don't have to apologize. I don't mind. He spoke while turning his head slightly towards the girl at the reception desk and stealing a glance of her. You should learn something from this boy here. Despite being only 10 years old, his behavior is much more mature than you, who's already 18 years old. Mrs. Mori spoke while staring at her granddaughter. What, you're only 10 years old? Aiko intoned with her eyes wide open. As he heard her, he simply nodded his head without speaking anything. And here I thought you'd be at least 15 or 16 years old. Because of his actions and bodily features, she had assumed him to be a teenager at the least. And here I got my hopes up for nothing. Just what kind of sports do you play to build such an amazing body? She whispered while diverting her eyes away from him. Forgive her for saying such things. She is just influenced by those K-pop stuffs, and because of that she just can't control herself whenever she sees a boy with pretty appearance like that of yours. Mrs. Mori mumbled while trying to shrug her whining. Aiko was a girl who was 18 years of age with a round-shaped face. With a little mascara over her monolid eyes and some lip gloss on her lips, she had done some light makeup over her face. And just like many girls her age, she was a K-pop fangirl, meaning she idolized those pretty boys from the Korean music groups and simped over them. And even the reason why she started conversation with him was because of his pretty appearance. Forget about her. I heard that you haven't eaten anything since your last meal at the plane. While Aiko was muttering something by herself in the background, Mrs. Mori inquired him if he was feeling hungry or not. Hearing her words, he nodded his head. Let's go and have something to eat. You need to maintain your body in order to become a good footballer after all. She mumbled as she started to lead the way towards the dining hall. Footballer, Aiko shouted as she heard the word footballer. June 28, 2019. With the appearance of the golden light across the sky from the east side of the horizon, the shimmering lights of twinkling stars started to fade away, along with the black heavens. Slowly and gradually, as the brightness of the golden light intensified, the piping hot red sphere of sun made its appearance from the direction of the light. And as the sun began to rise over the horizon, the sky became aglow with a tapestry of red and orange hues. While Hiro was taking his sweet time packing his cleats and shin guards inside his bag in his hotel room, Mr. Musashi was waiting for him outside his hotel. Hiro, hurry up. We need to leave ASAP. His mother spoke while putting on her shoes, and as she finished putting on her shoes, she placed the key of the room on the bed close to the door. I'll be waiting for you outside. So make sure to come fast, and make sure to lock the room before you leave, okay? Saying such, she grabbed the doorknob and twisted it. She then opened the door and left the room in a hurry. Finally, as he finished packing his stuffs inside his bag, he zipped his bag. He then lifted his bag and left his room in a hurry. Running down the stairs, he rushed outside the hotel. Good morning, Hiro. Mr. Musashi greeted him while opening the door of the car for him. Good morning, Mr. Musashi. Hiro greeted him back while hopping inside the car. And as he made himself comfortable, his mother and Mr. Musashi, both of them, hopped on the car as well. While Mr. Musashi took the steering, his mother sat beside him in the back seat. Fasten your seatbelt. Mr. Musashi spoke as he stepped on the accelerator. After about 20 minutes of car ride, they arrived near the stadium of Kawasaki Frontale Club. We're here. Mr. Musashi exclaimed while driving the car towards the stadium of the club. Where? Hiro mumbled while looking outside the window. While casting his gaze outside the window, he noticed several buildings and stores painted in black and blue color. Almost every store in the buildings were showcasing either the banner of the club or the logo of the club. While driving through those streets painted in black and blue, Hiro couldn't refrain himself from feeling excited. And even though he didn't see the stadium of the club while looking outside his window, he could feel the attachment of the people living in those streets for the club in their neighborhood. Look ahead. Mr. Musashi spoke while driving the car in a straight road between the streets. The stadium of the Kawasaki Frontale Club was just at the end of the straight road which they were driving in, at the moment. Upon hearing his reply, he excitedly took his head out from the window and looked in front of him. The giant stadium of Kawasaki Frontale Club, which had the capacity to host more than 26,000 people at once, became even more gigantic as they approached near the stadium. "Don't stick your head outside the window," his mother intoned as she pulled his head inside. "Sorry, I got too excited," he apologized for his reckless behavior. Finally, as they arrived in front of the entrance of the club, Mr. Musashi hit the brake all of a sudden. The gate ahead was blocked. A black and yellow striped log-like structure was placed at the entrance, blocking the pathway of the vehicles and also preventing people from entering the club. Just then a man dressed in blue uniform made his way towards their car. "The stadium has not opened yet," the man spoke grumpily as he got near to the car. "I'm hired by the club," Mr. Musashi spoke as he pulled out a card from his pocket. He then handed the card to the man in front of the car. The man kept on staring at the card for a while, and as he finished checking the validity of the card, the man lifted the barrier. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you're hired by the club." The man in uniform apologized for stopping them previously while letting them inside the gate. "No worries. You're only doing your job," Mr. Musashi replied while driving past the guard, towards the parking lot. And as he parked his car, Hiro and his mother got out of the car. Giant posters of the players of the club were displayed on the outer walls of the stadium. Alongside the posters was a gigantic painting of the club's logo, with a picture of dolphin in between the vertical stripes of black and blue. The logo was completed with a gigantic text of Kawasaki above the dolphin. He marveled while looking at those posters and the gigantic stadium in front of his eyes. "Let's head inside," Mr. Musashi spoke as he got out from his car. After parking the car at the parking lot, Mr. Musashi began to guide them inside the stadium. And even after verifying their identity at the front gate, they still had to verify their identity and purpose multiple times to the staffs while making their way towards the ground. Finally, after walking for a while, he found himself in front of the tunnel which lead to the pitch of Kawasaki Todoroki Stadium. While inside the stadium, he wandered his eyes around him. The walls were painted with portraits of the club legends and philosophy of the club. Suddenly, while making his way towards the pitch, the surrounding around him started to get darker. Why did it get dark all of a sudden? He wondered as his eyes struggled to adapt to the darkness. "Careful. There are stairs in front," Mr. Musashi warned him while leading the way. Just then, as he casted his gaze towards the direction of Mr. Musashi, he noticed a sign glowing in red color. The sign was indicating the presence of stairs in front. While walking down the stairs, he noticed a bright light coming from at the end of the tunnel. And as he made his way towards the light, he found himself at the pitch of the Kawasaki Todoroki Stadium. "Whoa! The stadium looks damn magnificent." With his eyes opened and jaw dropped, he mumbled while looking at the seats of the stadium in front. The magnificent sight of the stadium had paralyzed him in his place. While he was marveling at the sight of the stadium, he heard a voice coming from behind him. "Magnificent, right? I agree," he mumbled without thinking while staring at the stadium in front. "One day you'll play in this stadium," the voice from behind him stated. Still unaware of the presence of the person behind him, he nodded his head. "Then can we start the trial now? Can't we wait a little more, Mr. Musashi?" he spoke while turning his head back. And as he turned his head back, he was greeted with an unfamiliar face. Upon witnessing the unfamiliar person, he clumsily retracted a few steps back. For that whole time when he was hearing that voice coming from behind him, he had assumed that the voice belonged to Mr. Musashi. But on the contrary, the voice belonged to a silvery gray bearded old man with a dad bod. Dressed in a black tracksuit and a whistle hung in his neck. With a round face and small monolid eyes, he had the appearance of laughing Buddha with gray beard. "May I ask who you are, sir?" Hiro questioned the person in front. "Ha ha ha. The man who's going to conduct your trial today," the man replied while laughing. Just then Mr. Musashi made his way towards Hiro. "Oh, you've already met him. He's Makoto Kenzaki, the youth coach of Kawasaki Frontale Club." The bearded man with a dad bod was the U18 coach of the Kawasaki Frontale Club. "What, he's the coach?" Hiro blurted out in disbelief. He couldn't believe how someone like him could coach a professional youth team. "Yes. He's the coach, so you should watch what you speak," Mr. Musashi intoned after hearing his poor choice of words. "I'm sorry, Mr. Kenzaki. I didn't mean to belittle you." Hiro apologized for speaking ill of him. Ha ha ha. Don't worry, don't worry. I get that a lot. Mr. Kenzaki replied with a smile. He didn't mind his choice of words. I get that a lot after all. But let me remind you, a coach works with his mind, not with his body. I'll remember it from next time onwards. Hiro nodded his head. Now then, shall we test out your skills? Mr. Kenzaki questioned while looking at him. Hiro nodded his head. Then you should go get change. Yoichiro will show you the way towards the locker room. And if you look at the front seat of the locker room, you'll find a jersey. Just change into that jersey and come to the pitch in 5 minutes. I'll test your physicality. After getting dressed in the jersey provided by the club, he made his way towards the pitch dressed in a black and blue jersey. And as he made his way towards the pitch after getting dressed, he was greeted with yet another unfamiliar face in the pitch. Another old man who was dressed in a gray tracksuit was seen conversing with Makoto Kenzaki, the youth coach. Now who is he? Hiro blurted out all of a sudden while witnessing the appearance of another unfamiliar face in the pitch. He's Nozomi Kenzaki, younger brother of coach Makoto Kenzaki. He's the manager of U15 team of Kawasaki Frontale Club. And he's also the assistant of coach Makoto. Mr. Musashi, who was accompanying him, replied after hearing him. Unlike Makoto Kenzaki, the manager of U18 team, his younger brother Nozomi Kenzaki had a rather tall and emaciated body. With a rather emaciated face with revealing cheekbones accompanied by his monolid eyes, the rectangular clean-shaven face of manager Nozomi gave Hiro the impression of Frankenstein. Go warm up and loosen up your body. Manager Makoto spoke as he approached him, while setting up the training cones in a zigzag pattern. Hearing such, he began to stretch his body. For about a minute, he stretched his lower body. After that, he shifted his focus on his upper body for another minute. And finally, for about 30 seconds, he performed an aggressive sprint to complete his warm-up. Hiro, come here. Manager Makoto yelled while calling his name. Just as he finished his sprint, Manager Makoto called him. Hearing him calling his name, he immediately ran towards him. I believe you have finished warming up, right? Or do you still need some more time to warm up? Manager Makoto asked while looking at him. No sir, I've warmed up enough. Hiro intoned in a loud voice. Good. Then let's start the test without any delay. We'll be recording your pace on and off the ball for our first test. Do you see that ball over there? Manager Makoto spoke while pointing at the ball at the kickoff spot. Yes sir. Hiro intoned while nodding his head. For your first test, I want you to sprint from this side of endline towards that ball as fast as you can. And as you reach the ball, I want you to again sprint towards the opposite endline with the ball without pausing in between. Do you understand? Manager Makoto began to explain him about his first test. He wanted him to sprint towards the ball which was placed at the kickoff spot from the endline of one side. And after reaching the ball, he was again required to sprint towards the opposite endline with the ball on his feet without stopping. The test was designed to test his pace both on and off the ball. Well, apart from the length of the field, the test doesn't look that challenging, Hiro thought while looking at the ball in front. Just when he was taking the test lightly, Manager Makoto added another condition. Also, while coming back, you need to come with the ball. And do you see this cones placed in front of you? Manager Makoto inquired while pointing towards the cones placed in a zigzag pattern. Hiro nodded his head. This cones aren't here for the show or for the next test. You need to dribble through this cones and shoot the ball inside the net from outside the box. And only after the goal lands inside the net, your time will be recorded. Do you understand? He continued. The second condition has made the test a little more challenging, but it's still manageable if I lower my pace in between, he thought while looking at the pitch. Ding! New quest unlocked. Impress the Kenzaki brothers and complete the test given by Manager Makoto in less than 3 minutes. Reward on completion. 1 golden roulette ticket. Penalty on failure. Deduction of 5 random stat points. Note: the quest is mandatory and thus you cannot refuse the quest. What? This freaking system wants me to sprint this whole field without slowing down my pace. If I slow my pace even for a second, I'll fall behind the time set by the system and fail the quest. Hiro thought while contorting his face, after looking at the quest provided by the system. While looking at the quest provided by the system, he was lost in his thoughts, and thus, for a while he didn't reply anything at all. He just kept on staring blankly at the system notification in front of his eyes. Do you understand? Manager Makoto yelled while looking at him. Yes sir. Upon hearing his voice, he came back to his senses. While coming back to his senses, he yelled on top of his voice. Even though the quest was challenging, he was prepared to challenge himself to his limit. He was prepared to surpass his limits. Since his growth had become stagnant for quite a while, he had vowed to himself that he would take on any challenges without any complaints. Thus, despite the challenging quest given by the system, he accepted the quest without any complaints. Smack. Good. Then let's start the test, Manager Makoto exclaimed while smacking him on his back. Along with Coach Makoto and Coach Nozomi, Hiro walked towards the end line of the pitch. And as he prepared himself to run, Coach Makoto questioned, "Are you ready?" Hiro mumbled while nodding his head. System activate skill focus. Skill focus activated. To immerse himself on the task in front of him, he activated the skill focus. Manager Makoto then lifted the whistle hung in his neck towards his lips. 3.2.1. Beep. As Manager Makoto blew the whistle, Manager Nozomi lowered his head towards the stopwatch in his hand and pressed the start button of his stopwatch. With the sound of whistle, Hiro stormed towards the ball placed at the kickoff spot. Because of the activation of skill focus, he was solely focused on the ball in front of him. He truly runs like a wild horse. Manager Makoto mumbled in awe while witnessing his run. Indeed, it hasn't even been 20 seconds and he's already approaching the ball. Manager Nozomi replied while looking at his stopwatch. It didn't take him long to reach the ball. Just within 25 seconds, he reached the ball. Maybe he'll complete the test within 2 minutes. Coach Nozomi mumbled while pressing the stop button of his stopwatch. He then noted down his time on his notebook which he was carrying inside his tracksuit's pocket. While looking at his impressive run, Coach Nozomi assumed him to finish the test within 2 minutes. However, his speed decreased during his time at the ball, and by the time he shot the ball towards the goalpost after dribbling through the cone, 2 minutes 27 seconds had passed on Coach Nozomi's stopwatch. Beep. As the ball landed inside the net, Coach Makoto blew his whistle and ended the first test. And as soon as the whistle sounded, he crashed down on the floor from exhaustion. Contrary to his expectation, sprinting the whole field was much tougher than expected. His final time was 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Quite impressive timing for someone of his age. Coach Nozomi mumbled while looking at his notebook. Because of his impressive start, he had reached the ball at just 24.37 seconds, and if not for the ball slowing down his pace, he would have completed the whole test within 1.5 minutes. Just as the first test came to an end with the sound of whistle from Manager Makoto, Hiro threw himself on the ground and collapsed on the floor. Huff. Huff. With steams of sweat oozing out from his body, he began to pant heavily while lying on the ground with his face facing the sky. Damn. I never imagined that a 3-minute sprint would tire me out like this. I really need to work on my physicality to increase my work rate, he thought while shading his eyes from the sun. Just as he lifted his hand down and opened his eyes, a silhouette of a person appeared in front of him, blocking his view of the sky. While trying to get a better view of the person, he narrowed his eyes, and as he narrowed his eyes, the appearance of the person became much more visible. The person standing in front of him was Manager Makoto Kenzaki. Rest for about a minute and we'll begin the second test immediately, Manager Makoto exclaimed while standing in front of him, shading him from the sun. While he was resting on the pitch, Manager Nozomi walked towards the sidelines and brought a sack of balls with him. Time's up, now get up, Manager Makoto yelled after the specified time for rest came to an end. Hearing such, he pressed his hands on the ground and uplifted him from the ground, and as he uplifted himself from the ground, he brought his hand closer to his face and wiped off the sweat from his face. After wiping off the sweat from his face, he made his way towards the coaches. Okay, now we'll begin the second test. For the second test we'll be testing your ball control and shot accuracy. And to do that, Manager Nozomi will be supplying you with crosses from different spots on the field. And you can either shoot the ball after trapping the ball or you can shoot the ball at the very first touch. But remember, you cannot touch the ball for more than 2 times. The crosses might be irregular too. So pay attention to the ball and watch out for wild passes. Just as he finished describing him about the second test, Manager Makoto dropped an indirect hint. And for the second test, he was required to score goals from the crosses of Manager Nozomi. As simple as Manager Makoto made it sound, the second test was rather tricky, since he had to predict the projectile of the ball and the type of pass before even trapping the ball or shooting the ball. He was required to pay extra attention to the ball. While trapping and shooting were the easiest part of the second test, The tricky part was to predict the projectile of the ball. Well, aside from the wild passes which he mentioned about, there's nothing else to worry about the second test, he thought after hearing the details of the second test. Just as he finished describing him about the details of the second test, Manager Nozomi ran towards the left corner of the side of field they were staying in at the moment. Okay, are you ready? Manager Makoto inquired after Manager Nozomi assumed his position. He nodded his head slightly while assuming his position inside the penalty box. Beep. Manager Nozomi performed a 3-second run-up before kicking the ball inside the penalty box. The ball flew towards the outer edge of the penalty box, and since he had already predicted the projectile of the ball, he had already placed himself at the position where the ball was going to land. After assuming some height, the ball started to make its descent, and as the ball descended downward towards him, he comfortably trapped the ball in his chest and shot the ball with his right foot in mid-air before it even fell down. And as the ball left his feet, it flew towards the post like a missile. Just like in matches. His first touch really is impressive, Manager Makoto mumbled in awe after witnessing his perfect volley. After that first volley, Manager Makoto kept on supplying him with even more challenging crosses. Sometimes he made him run towards him with his short crosses, while sometimes he made him run far away from him with his powerful long crosses. As if he was playing tennis with him with the football, he kept on making him run all over the pitch with his irregular crosses. But despite that, he didn't miss even a single ball, and neither did he touch the ball more than 2 times in that whole test, nor did he complain about the intensity of the test. Just when will this end? Isn't it already enough? Like you've already seen me score about 60 times without violating your conditions. Just how much more are you going to grind me? He mumbled while contorting his face. He then casted his gaze towards Coach Nozomi, who was assuming his position at right side of the half-line, preparing himself to take his 60th cross. Huh? Is he smiling? He mumbled after witnessing the smile on Manager Nozomi's face. Witnessing his smile, he turned his gaze towards Manager Makoto, and even he was smiling as well. While Hiro was suffering, both of the Kenzaki brothers were enjoying themselves. I'm damn sure that the test should have ended way ago, but since I kept on scoring without complaining, they continued the test out of excitement. He mumbled while looking at their smiling faces. Since the coaches were completely overtaken by their excitement, he decided to take the matter in his hands and end the test by himself. I need to do something. Beep. Just as Manager Makoto blew his whistle, Manager Nozomi shot the ball hard towards Hiro. At first the ball seemed like it was going to head right, but because of the spin on the ball, it curved and changed its trajectory towards left. Predicting the trajectory of the ball, Hiro placed himself at the location where the ball was going to land. Determined to take the matter in his hands, instead of shooting the ball towards the post behind him, he shot the ball in mid-air towards the opposite post. Although his shot wasn't powerful enough to reach the opposite post without dropping, the ball still managed to find its way inside the opposite post after bouncing twice. I think that much is enough for the second test, Manager Makoto mumbled while rubbing his hair. Yeah, I think it's enough as well. Manager Nozomi parroted to his older brother's statement and agreed to end the second test. Sigh. Hearing their statements, he revealed a deep sigh of relief while throwing himself on the ground once again. He was simply too exhausted to stand straight. With that 60th cross, the test finally came to an end after almost an hour of shooting the ball repeatedly. So how many did he score? Manager Makoto inquired as he concluded the end of the second test. Along with supplying crosses to Hiro, Manager Nozomi was also noting down his progress on his notebook. 60 out of 60. No misses. 39 without trapping and 21 with trapping. Manager Nozomi replied to Manager Makoto's question while looking at his notebook. Damn, he's a monster. Manager Makoto intoned.